Welcome to this video. We'll be covering the GCSE topic forming expressions. Whilst questions on this topic can appear scary or abstract, I'm going to show you a simple process that will hopefully allow you to get through any question that they could ask on this topic. These questions are available free online as well, so if you wish to pause the video at any moment and attempt them yourself, please click on the link in the description and you may do so. Firstly, in maths, an expression is a statement about a situation described by numbers and letters, as shown by the examples shown here. This is not to be confused with an equation, which will be covered in another video. Okay, now in maths we use a letter, often x, to describe an unknown value, a number that we don't know. And the key to answering these questions is threefold. First of all, what we do is we choose a number. Simply choose your own number and work out what the answer would be. Step 2 is to replace your number you worked out, with or number that you chose, I should say, with a letter, usually with X. It depends on the question. Sometimes they give you a letter, sometimes you come up with a letter yourself. And step 3 is to write down the calculation that you did in your head. Okay, so you're writing down the calculation. What you write there in the calculation is the answer to the question. Again, if you do feel comfortable to pause the video and try these questions for yourself before I go through them, then please do so. Okay, now let's look at some questions. So an adult cinema ticket cost X pounds. The price of a child's ticket is half the price of an adult ticket. Write an expression for the price in pounds of a child's ticket. So let's say that we choose, so we're going to choose a number first of all. Let's choose a nice, even, easy number like £10. So let's say the adult ticket costs £10. Okay, so just think to yourself, if the child's ticket is half the price of an adult's ticket, hopefully you manage to get there. Half of 10 is the calculation you're doing. Half of 10, which is 5. So in other words, how do we get to that £5? That's the crux of these questions, is the methods, the calculation. Well, what we did is we did half of 10. So how can we do half of 10? What is the operation for doing half of 10? Well, there's actually several answers for this. So the most common one I think that we should look at would be to use divided by 2. Half of something is the same as dividing by 2. So that's the first step. The second and third steps are to simply replace the number that you used with X. So in this situation, we're going to replace that 10. It says that the cinema ticket costs X, so we're starting at X. Okay, we're starting at X and we're dividing by 2. We're doing half of X, which is the same as dividing by 2. And that is one way to write an expression in pounds for the child's ticket. However, there are other methods, other ways of expressing this. And one of these, so if we were to write the same expression or using the same operation, which is divide, then another way of writing this that's very, very useful to know is to write it like so. Use a dividing line. Okay, that X divided by 2 is an operation. That dividing line there describes the operation of dividing X by 2. So it means exactly the same thing as the first one. Can you think of any other ideas for this one? Well, there is another way of writing it, which is to say we want half of X. A half of X. In other words, we can write it as a half multiplied by X. So we're using a half times X. Whenever we have numbers next to letters, and this is extremely useful to know, extremely important to know, that a number before a letter means we're multiplying that letter by the number. So that half X is the same as a half multiplied by X. And there's another way to write this even, and that is to write it as a decimal instead. So a decimal, half as a decimal, that is 0.5. So you can write it as 0.5x. All of those answers would get you the marks. It's useful to know what they are as well. Okay, in the next situation, we've got Charles having M marbles. Rosalind has 6 more marbles than Charles this time. Okay, 6 more marbles than Charles. So again, let's say that Charles had 10 marbles. Let's say Charles had 10 marbles. If Rosalind has 6 more, what we're doing with that 6 is we are actually adding it to the marbles that Charles had. Okay, we're adding it, aren't we? Doing 10 plus 6. So the answer that you would have worked out in your head beforehand was 16. All we do now is we simply replace that 10 with the letter M. Okay, we're going to replace that 10 with the letter M. So we end up with M plus 6. And that will be our answer for this one. Okay, M plus 6. Okay. Next question. So we've got Michael is paid £10 for each hour that he works. 1 week Michael works for 20 hours. Write an expression for the total amount in pounds Michael is paid for this week. Okay, so he's working for 20 hours. Let's say that each hour he earns £3 per hour. If he earns £3 per hour, for 1 hour, excuse me, then what we're saying is there's 3 that will appear 20 times. Okay, £3 is going to be applied 20 times. Okay, so in other words, we're going to have £3. So 3 lot 3, but 20 times. 3 but 20 times is going to give us 60. Okay, it's going to give us 60, and we get to that calculation because we're doing £3 multiplied by 20. Something worth noting, when multiplying, it doesn't matter which way round you put those numbers. 3 times 20 is the same as 20 times 3. Okay, and that's going to be useful and important for us for this situation to remember, because we've got because we're going to replace that 3 now with the letter X. Okay, in other words, we're going to write 20 multiplied by X. And as previously mentioned, when we have a number that is multiplied by a letter, all we do is we write that number in front of the letter. That 20x means we're doing 20 multiplied by x. And that is the answer to this one. Okay, final question. So Albert is given n sweets and he eats 5 of those sweets. He eats 5 of those sweets. Write an expression for the number of sweets that Albert now has. Okay, well again, let's use a number. Let's say we use the number 7 in this situation. So let's say he had 7 sweets and he's eaten 5 of them. So he's eaten 5 of them. Does he have more or less than he started with? He has less. If he's eaten 5 of them, he now has 2. So what calculation did we do for this one? Well, what we did is we started off with 7 and we went down, we reduced that number by 5. If we reduce the number by 5, that's the same as subtraction. Okay, it's the same as subtraction. So the calculation that we did using our own number was 7 subtract 5 is equal to 2. So the expression here, we're going to change that 7 with the letter n. The letter n is given in this question. So we're going to start with n and we're going to say it's n minus or subtract 5. So n subtract 5 is the expression for the number of sweets that Albert has now. Thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe for more. Or if you're interested in one-to-one tuition specialising in foundation or higher GCSE exam preparation or functional skills, please click on the link in the description and submit an inquiry at apexmaths.net.